Oh, yeah, Tasha. Hello. Hi, guys. How are you? It's very quiet in here today. How is everybody doing? Anything cool going on? I don't even know. I've been going to my physical therapy. I don't know if I've told some of you guys about it or if I mentioned it last week. Um, it's my word for when you're old and you get a personal trainer, like you invest in something to help you get your body back or your strength. I call it physical therapy because, yeah, I'm starting from like damaged goods. You know what I mean? Like, you know, working out, personal training, that kind of stuff. To me, that's like the people that are in shape and they want to keep it that way. And that's not me. So I call it physical therapy because it's about as expensive if you think of all the copays, right? I know a lot of people. I think we talked about this. Can't. I've had clients who are like, the physical therapy copays are like, well, there's are more like $50 or sometimes $35, and this is, believe it or not, a little bit cheaper because you make a commitment. But it kicks my butt and it's really good. And I'm in my third week and I already feel immeasurably different. The first week I was in agony. So that's just Tasha wants. It's a treat. How are you guys? And you can hear me, I'm sure. I don't see anybody saying anybody saying they can't hear me. So I'm just taking up my notebook in case I have to jot something down. Sometimes you guys give good ideas for what might be best served as a a standalone video later on. So just want to do that, drag it out from a bunch of bills. So I see 333s in the house. Good to see you again this week. I see Kevin Johnson from Morristown, Tennessee. Good to see you, Kevin. Dimple from Ohio. Hi, Dimple. Our Willie's in the house. Good to see you. Willie. Michelle Evans in the house. Good to see you. And I love seeing when people who have already prevailed and they come back and they give kind of support to those that are still going through the journey, because I have a feeling you don't really forget how frustrating or how concerning or how I hear you. So does everybody else. While we're in the midst of the struggle, I guess. Okay, so that's really great. Ruby Williamson is in the house. I don't think we've met, Ruby. Nice to see you. All right, here we go. We have our first question is from 333, who is here bright and early. I appreciate. 333 says, would DDS schedule a CE before or after they conduct the mental RFC, that's MRFC, mental residual functional capacity assessments, or RFC, residual functional capacity assessment, and you're probably referring to the physical, which would be the counterpart to the I hear you. Just gotta give her a big piece. Keep her pie hole shut. Okay. That would be after. So remember, the MRFC is the assessment that's done after all the evidence is in there to determine what is 333's residual functional capacity from a physical standpoint or from a mental standpoint, whatever your impairments happen to be. So they can't do that without all the evidence. What would be the point of having some evidence getting their internal doctor to take the file and do the RFC, and then only have more evidence that could change that RFC, could make you more limited than you are, or more, have a higher capacity, depending on if you improve, after you've already done the RFC. Then they would just be going into cycle mode. They'd have to go and redo the RFC. But that would be very inefficient and expensive for taxpayers and the Social Security Fund at the same time, which is, of course, taxpayers. The working taxpayers, not the wealthy. The wealthier, when we get income from our capital gains guys, our 401ks, things like that, that is not what goes in the Social Security Fund, just to throw that in there. Social Security Fund is funded by largely what workers pay in through their payroll tax, not their income tax. Nothing to do with it. It's an additional tax, what we pay into our Social Security. Totally separate from income tax. So when we talk about reducing taxes, granted, I want them all reduced, but we're usually talking about income tax because it's not going back to us directly. So again, the adjudicator at the DDS, and the DDS, for anybody who's new here, is, you know, that after it leaves your field office and it goes to your state medical workup office, that's the DDS. DDS stands for Disability Determination Services. Sometimes each state names theirs differently because those are all state workers doing the job of figuring out if you are disabled. State workers do it by following the federal law, if they're doing it right. So the CE being part of that evidence, 333, should come before they ship out the whole file to that medical expert with the SSA for his RFC assessment. Then it goes back to the adjudicator to take the RFC and figure out where does this fit in the law. You know, does it mean that he's able or disabled or able to do some job out there? And then you get your determination. So definitely before either one of the residual functional capacity assessments are done, because they are assessed on the totality of the evidence, if they're being done right. Kevin Johnson, hello from Tennessee. I think I said that before. Dimple says, if a doctor has added anxiety and depression to their list of diagnoses, but it wasn't referred to a counselor or psychiatrist, then the DDS asks for records. Would a CE exam be sufficient? Sufficient for what? A lot of the times, that's all the person has. The SSA adjudicator does what he's required to do, which is, well, it's been alleged, they haven't gotten treated, but it might be so. So our duty under the law is to schedule the CE, unless there's some reason, like it's so clearly one way or another, but that's not typical. So, I heard you. So the CE will be legally sufficient if basically they're giving you an opportunity to have evidence. If the evidence is that you're pretty unimpaired entirely, well, then that's what it's going to say. And then any allegation of, you know, maybe reduced concentration or focus that would maybe interfere with a smart job would now be not able to be gotten, because the CE exam was the only evidence. The CE exam by a dude that's paid for by the SSA, and that doesn't mean that they're dishonest, but I'm just saying, you know, that's the only evidence that you have. Well, then you got to take your nuts when they get served to you, because that's all one chose to do. And it's about, remember, the functional. They're trying to determine if there would be functional impact from a diagnosis of anxiety or depression. So merely having anxiety or depression, some people don't have any impact, not on their work abilities. They might have impacts at home. Maybe they come home from work and they ignore their family or don't clean their house or something. But if they're functioning totally at work, it doesn't impact any kind of work capacities, then it's not going to matter. But for the people that need to show that they can't do their prior job, which was Brainiac, or if they need to show that they can't transfer the skills from the Brainiac job they can't do for physical reasons, they can't transfer them because they can't remember them that well. They get too distracted when trying to remember what they did there to transfer into that new job that would be less arduous that they could supposedly do. That's the evidence that can be lacking. So Sufficient? It depends what you want sufficient for. Sufficient to make a determination? Absolutely. Because they're only going to make it on what's available. And if they're the only ones that helped you get something and you didn't help yourself, and I'm not talking about you, Dimple, I'm just saying generally speaking, then that's the evidence that you have. I mean, each claimant has to be taken on their own word. Like, well, no, I didn't get any mental health because I didn't need it. Okay, well, we're gonna just make sure that's true in case you don't realize. We're gonna send you to a CE in case that you do have some sort of impairment that might limit something slightly or more than slightly. Meaning the SSA would say this, and where the chips fall. If you're a rock star because you really have no impact from it and your brain is just as sharp, fast, and focused as ever, like when you were 20, then it is what it is. If it's not, there's, things you can do to help show that. I feel like I got hair sticking out from the fan, maybe. Thin hair, right? So anyway, I hope that answered that question. And good afternoon to you too, Dimple. Good afternoon, Willie, again. Yep, Tasha's in the house. I put her back in back of me. Is that better, guys? Because she's always over here, and then she poops all over my desk. And then usually she's like out of the picture anyway, because, I don't know, she's off to the side. Michelle M. says, Stephanie and I got a fully favorable approval last Friday. Yes, we did. That was awesome. Yeah. I love that you're coming back, Michelle. Thanks for sticking with us here. Danny's in the house. Hi, Danny. Dimple says, yes, I understand the working out therapy all too well. Yeah, to me, it's like fixing something that's kind of broken. Or, what do you call it when you're like just deteriorating? Like you're too sedentary. Like if I was always working out and doing stuff and remaining active in my day-to-day life outside of work, probably wouldn't need it, right? Because I maintain the muscle tone and all that. But I have not. It's probably on average 12, since September anyway, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And some days might be less, but then that's because some days are like 15, right? It is crazy, but that's because there's been a lot of projects going on, a lot of things going on beyond, what's right here. And even, it's not like I doubled my caseload on purpose or anything like that. I mean, other things related to Social Security disability and other things, mostly Social Security disability, but kind of outside the sphere of this. And it's just created a lot of planning and brain work. So long hours. Prior to that, I was still sedentary. I was probably more like, never less than 60 hours a week, I'd say, for the last 30 years, maybe a little less. But I love what I do, so I don't know. It's just totally different. If I was still like bartending or something like I did many years ago, I'd be like, and I liked bartending. It was fun, but not like that many hours or that long. Like that's a young person's job, and it served its purpose. Helped me buy my house, Ruby Williamson. It took Social Security 10 years to settle my case. All right, they didn't settle it, but okay. Then they said I didn't have enough to get SSDI. So what they did was they found that you were disabled. It took a long time for you to get the evidence that they needed, the sufficient treatment in all the areas that would show that you could not do any of those 12,000 jobs out there, Ruby, even the super easy ones. And yeah, that's the difficulty with long cases. And this is why I always say, as soon as you decide you're going to file, you got to start becoming the full-time patient. Treat with everything. Because if your DLI, date last insured, Ruby, runs out, and it is because your SSDI that you paid for when you were still able to work, that was term insurance. It doesn't last forever. It's not like retirement where you're always going to be vested in that. You just got to hit the age. Once you've worked enough, you're vested in that. SSD is term insurance. It only lasts for so long after you stop paying in. And they don't teach us this in high school, so I totally understand 99% of people not knowing this. Financial advisors, that I speak to don't even know this. So it's because they don't teach us the basics about where our taxes go when we're in high school, which they should. I know that high school students might not care, they're immortal and all that business, but I still think it should be at least like a mini mod course, mandatory, maybe part of, I don't know if they still have home ec, or I forget what it's called now. Basic survival in the United States, but they don't. So people don't know it. And it breaks my heart when someone who did work like yourself and then become unable to work in the jobs they feel like they'd be comfortable in, but little do they know that there's all these other jobs out there that they have to prove they can't do. It's not a matter of just, I don't think I could do that. It's got to be medically proven, medically, which is why I say we have to become extreme patients and have extreme patience. But I say it even though and I know people cringe are like, we all hate I don't even go to the doctor until it's like probably too late. That's why I have to go to the personal trainer. But, I get it. But if you have a case or you think you're starting to get to the point where you can't work, now's the time to start balls to the wall, addressing every body part that isn't like it was when you were 20. I mean, head to toe, everything, body systems and body parts. Right, Dimple? Michelle? Isn't that how I am? I'm such a pain in the rear. So one thing to just, spin off of Ruby's experience, because I feel terrible about that, because I think if you had been advised and had better information, there's things you could have done. Definitely the one about getting better evidence faster, not thinking you can rely on what your doctor has told you and what your PCP. So that's about, we have a playlist on that. I don't know if it's a playlist, but I should probably make one. It might be under evidence. I'm not sure, but it's about treating and how, what you should be focusing on. But the other thing, Ruby, and you guys know, this comes up every week. Watch your DLI, your date last insured. If you don't know it, find out what it is. And know that if you don't have enough strong evidence before that date comes, you will never win your SSD. You'll be in Ruby's situation. And if you're poor, you can get SSI. Not a good place to be. So if you know that that's what plan B is if you don't win, and that there's a way to do plan C to prevent plan B, maybe more people would do it. And that's that whole thing about keeping up those credits. If you're like 3 years into not working, maybe now's the time to consider getting that little gigger job, very, very part-time work, never making more than SGA, and ideally far from SGA. Like if you make $800 a month, let me think if I'm doing my math right. Yeah. $800 a month, that's it. Gross. And if you're self-employed, don't write it all off on business expenses. You need to pay the taxes on that. It's going to be your net that you pay the taxes on. You will be getting every quarterly credit, Social Security earnings credit possible. By just doing that, you'll get all 4 for the year. Your DLI will never be in your rearview window like Ruby's became. And you will always be able to refile for SSD. So like, for instance, Ruby, if you did that, you would eventually, and assume you still remain disabled from full-time work, but you're not bedridden, and maybe you're not disabled from a really accommodated part-time under SGA, short shifts every other day, 10, 15 hours a week tops job, you too can get your SSD back. I don't know how old you are and if that'll be worth it. But you can go from SSI back to SSD, because the second the annual recalculations go on with what the IRS says you earned and paid the taxes on, that part-time work, SSA recalculates, does this person have enough credits to be insured for SSD? Oh, yes, they do. Now they have 20 quarterly credits in their last 40 quarters in the last 10 years. perfectly good. My nose getting a little itchy. And they will say, oh, we have to reevaluate. Is she still disabled? You're going to get a CDR anyway. But if she's still disabled, she can go from SSI to SSD. And now you've got your SSD, the one you paid in all the years prior, and you don't have to wait till retirement to get it. I highly recommend if it's possible, guys. I do. So I took that the long road on that one, Ruby, but I hope it explained a lot. Because I feel for you. So, well, actually, you don't even say you got SSI, Ruby. You said it took 10 years to settle my case, which, again, doesn't mean settling. They don't settle. They just literally found you had enough evidence finally, which could involve the different evidence that's needed, the easier evidence that's needed when you do an age change category, too, once you hit 50, and then once you hit 55. So depending on, you know, where your journey was, Ruby. So you might not even have SSI. That would only be if you're poor, you're otherwise poor. Like you don't have a spouse that brings in income. You don't have a trust fund sending you money that's not earned, you know. You don't have investments that you're living off of. Then you could be SSI. I'm guessing perhaps you are on SSI, though, even though you didn't mention it. Hi, Rain Gal. Good to see you. Trika Brown is in the house. And I know I'm saying that wrong, Trika, but you were here last week, right? She says, hi, Joy. I am excited to share an update. Woo! I had my ALJ hearing last Thursday and got a favorable decision verbally with an amended onset to 1 of 2025. I applied 4 of 2025. Okay. So, guys, I know we've talked about this before. This is not a rare thing to happen at a hearing. In fact, I just did a consult on this with somebody else yesterday, I think. It is very possible at a hearing, a judge does think your records show that you're disabled, but he doesn't really think that the records from 2023 are strong enough to show it. But by the time January 2025 came, it showed it because now you had maybe some MRIs or, you know, whatever was the crux of the new evidence was enough to show. So that's awesome. So it sounds like the judge suggested to you, or if you have a lawyer or a non-attorney rep, said, hey, counselor, have you discussed with your client the possibility of an amended onset? And then I say, well, Judge, I have, but what did you have in mind? And I want this all on the record, right? And then the judge says, well, I'm seeing some, you know, I'm not really seeing stuff before January 2025. That would be sufficient. But as of January, this MRI shows blah, 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 plus then there was physical therapy, whatever the case may be. Whatever new evidence was pivotal. And so what he's suggesting is, I'm not finding it before then. So that's going to have to be a no. But I find it now. And would your client like to, and he would like you to, amend their onset to, would they be willing to amend their onset, alleged onset date to this new date that I know I can find, so I can give them a fully favorable versus a partially favorable, or I think about it a little bit after the hearing and I decide, that's not quite strong enough and that person loses. So, you know what I mean? Because they can look at, you know, they look deeper into the file later and they could have a change of heart. So it's basically a bird in the hand to do what Trika Brown did versus holding out with a wing and a prayer for that 2 birds in the bush. Anybody like the fact that I always throw out these old-fashioned phrases? Oh my gosh. Kind of strange, right? But I do it all the time. So it might drive you nuts. So that's the whole thing about, before you go into a hearing, think about whether there was an age change. And I don't know, Trika, did you have an age change on that date? Was anything pivotal about January of 2025? Or was it just your evidence did change? Sometimes it's the evidence, and sometimes it is an age change. And that's pretty much the 2 reasons, I think. But that's wonderful. And it also lets you know at the hearing that it's done. Whereas otherwise, if she didn't accept it and amend her onset date, which is totally her right, it would have just been, okay, hearing's over. I'll get you my decision within X weeks if I can. and then you don't know what the decision is, right? Is he going to go with the partially favorable that he suggested he was going to find a January date? Or is he going to look deeper at that evidence and be like, I just found out she went on vacation in December of 2024. Huh, look at that. She told her doctor. They went hiking in the, I don't know, what the Appalachians. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, maybe they didn't see, like, just, you never know. You never know. And that is not to put the fear of God into everybody about, oh, I better take whatever the judge offers me. I'm not saying it for that reason, but I'm just being frank about the risks and the fact that he's telling you that he can't even find good evidence before that, good enough evidence. He's telling you what he's seeing. And he's had attorney advisors, in all likelihood, already have reviewed the file, and they probably helped suggest these dates, or he did it, and then they confirmed, yeah, that's probably about right, Judge. This is what I think goes on behind the scenes, because they have attorney advisors. They're the ones that sometimes draw to a judge's attention that they think there should be an OTR when an OTR comes out. The judge doesn't have hundreds of files in his office where he's just poring over them all day. He's busy doing hearings. So there's a lot of team players making sure evidence that needs to be seen is seen before the hearing. Obviously, the attorneys on this side and non-attorney reps that are good. We on this side are also trying to point out those. That's why many of us do a pre-hearing brief to get that what we see in the evidence that we've submitted or that the SSA had already gotten, that it is front and center if it's important. Not the minutia. That's not going to make the difference. The critical, bigger things. So, Trey, I'm really happy for you. Keep coming back, girl. Adam's in the house. Hi, Adam. Oops, did I put you up there? Oh, my goodness, my clicker's not. See, my clicker's not working right. See, nothing's working right. Therefore, the physical therapy I'm going to for a year. Yeah, a year. I have to take a couple weeks off, though, because we're going on a trip. Trika says, your channel helped me so much to know how to answer the judge's questions completely, showing how my limitations affected my ability to work. That is such a kind thing to share. Thank you. I appreciate that, Trika. She might be referring to, Trika, is it the playlist about hearings or just generally like the live stream? Because as you guys know, there's thousands of videos. There's a ton of playlists. They try to be named on the big subject matter under which they fall. They've just been accumulating for years, so that's why they're shared. As many of you know, they started out with just for my clients, and then I went public with them. So they are a little off the cuff and goofy, as you know, because I just speak it. But I'm really glad that helped. The hearings ones I love because, well, I like the functional. I don't know. I guess I like a few different ones, but they're practical. They're practical. La Rocho's in the house. All things Social Security. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Adam says, are y'all doing well? Yes, we are. Koobie's in the house. Hey, Koob. Trika says, my pay stubs helped a lot because I've made several attempts to go back, but kept getting placed on leave. I would think that would be helpful too. It shows that progression. So my attorney was able to show I was below SGA with actual work pay. So that too, if there's an SGA issue, but even without the SGA issue, showing the on again, off again ability to work, you might not be under SGA because, you're earning enough, you're not out long enough, or you're getting paid while you're out, whatever. But that can show the fact that things kept decompensating again. Sometimes it's actually failed work attempts too. Brings back your alleged onset date further. But otherwise, it's still just a good representation of the history, and the judge can see. And now she's here in 2026. Look what's been going on since 2024, 2023, or whatever it was. Yeah, and the part that Trike is saying about showing that I was below SGA with actual work pay versus STD income. STD. Oh, short-term disability. Yeah, and that's usually something that should come out early when you're still at the field office. But sometimes they don't listen and they put a later date for the alleged onset date when the person actually disconnected from the employee, even though they hadn't been earning their income. They'd just been receiving it through short-term disability, STD. Or, the annual amount they earned was SGA, but it was really only in the first 6 months because then they, had all this time off. That's how you can then, and it sounds like you might have, because that's why you're talking about SGA and short-term disability, proven that, in fact, I did stop earlier than what my initial alleged onset date was. Judge, we'd like to amend that onset date. And this, guys, is an example of amending your onset date to earlier, not later, to get the win from the judge, but to say, we were trying to argue, show the SSA down below that there was no SGA earnings after January of 2024, but they put January of 24. But if you look at 2023, this is short-term disability earnings. This wasn't me going to work. And then you can get he'll say, okay, I'll amend the alleged onset date. Doesn't mean he's going to find you disabled back then, but he's got to see that you're amending it so he can consider it. That's just one of the technical things you got to do aside from just the proof stuff. Let me just give her a little cookie. Are you looking for a little more cookie? Carmen's in the house. Hi, Carmen. I don't think we've met. Carmen P. How do you get a business and grow before being taken off SSI? Oh, that's a loaded question, but and I don't actually practice that because you're on SSI, and I do the proving that people are trying to prove they should be on SSI. And this is going to be aside from any programs you might find, Carmen, but you have to follow the rules of the income limits, and that's going to be affected by you got income and resource limits. You have to be super, super careful. But there are programs out there. I just don't know them in my lane very well. I just don't study them. But if you have a business, aside from being ceased, right, the possibility of cessation because you've improved or earned too much activity, if you're the one running the whole business, it's going to be more difficult unless you're under one of these programs where it's, somehow protected. It's very helpful if you have someone else doing the management and doing most of the work, except you're doing, let's say it's 10 hours of labor a month and you're only getting paid for what you work, not the equity in the business, as a wage, and then it's reported as the wage. So you're under SGA and you're not so high that you would lose your SSI due to income that month. You have to do a lot of, unlike with SSD, you have to do there's so many tentacles that you have to be, it's like almost juggling. You have to juggle this rule with this rule, but then this rule, and so it's really complicated. And because there's really no way probably for lawyers or non-attorney reps to actually earn a paycheck doing that, like it's zero. It's probably why no one takes the time to study that better. So you probably have to go to some legal aid or study it up yourself, which you could definitely study it up yourself. I mean, you're able to do a business, so you're obviously got something going on. Redman says, hi, Redman. I don't think we've met, but I grew up with someone that we used to call Redman. He was a pretty cool dude. He was older. Of course, back then I was young. Redman says, QQ. I don't know what that means. Is that eyeballs? Got approved at ALJ and they set disability date as a 55th birthday. Not unusual. The attorney submitted docs to recover maximum pay from myself directly now. I don't know what that means. Judge approved the full amount of $9,200. Why did you contest? You contested that you didn't want to pay your attorney the lousy $9,200. Wow. I don't know why you would do that. That kind of is like looking karma right in the face, but maybe you have your reason. Attorney submitted docs or well, I don't know why the attorney would have to submit anything. You had a contingent fee agreement, right? It sounds like for some reason the contingent fee agreement wasn't valid and he had to go on fee petition. But then of course, fee petition, the full amount is not 9,200. It can be much, much higher. There's no cap on it like the contingent. So it sounds like you agreed to the cap of 9,200 with the contingent fee. Contingent fee was the law of the land for your case. You signed to agree to it, and then you contested it after you won. I'm curious, Redmond, why did you do that? I know I had some discussion in videos a while back, like, trying to explain to people why that's in really bad taste, and it is a bad karma thing to do. It's like I promised I would pay for the work you did, and it's if you're successful, and now that I'm there, I'm gonna kick the ladder out from under you. That's kind of how it is, Redmond. I'm sorry. I contested it, SSA. Okay, what happens now? Well, they're going to see why are you contesting it? I don't know why. You agreed to a contingent fee capped at 9,200. 9,200 only happens if you have back pay of at least $36,000. And it's contingent, meaning if he did all the work and then you lost, his work was for free. He didn't say, oh, I want to renege on that and make him pay me for the hours I did, even though I didn't win. So do you see what I'm saying? I think people have not learned what contingent fee agreement means with the percentage. It's what applies if the contingency occurs. So if you want to look at that video, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, Redman, so you might want to just look at that video. I'm not sure why you would do that. And I tried to explain in that other video where I had more time. Like you got to think about it this way. It might be very inappropriate. It might be dishonest. It could be a variety of things that are distasteful. So you might want to rethink what you're doing, just in the name of morality, but there are videos, so you can go do that. And I don't hold it against you, mind you, because I know a lot of people get confused on it. And they're like, 9,200 seems like an awful lot of money, blah, blah, blah. And it might even be like, they're like, he only worked on my case for a year. Well, a year, that's a year of work, first of all. But some are even faster. And I explain, you got to look at it differently. It'll make your heart feel better once you do. And it explains it a little bit more than I can do right here because I don't want to hold up too much. Trika says, I'm 45. Ooh, so my attempts helped me show I've attempted but have been unsuccessful since 12/25. Awesome. All right, so she's just telling us, guys, she's under 50 and she just prevailed. And you did it with a fully favorable at the hearing. No, partially favorable at the hearing. That's awesome. See, guys, under 50s can win, but you have to have a lot of, you need to be, especially you guys, but even the ones older, of course, your treatment and your evidence building for your health purposes and for your case purposes, I want to say full-time job, even if it's not 40 hours a week. It should be your priority if you want to get this done. If you slack, you're going to get a slack result. It's just how it goes, guys. And again, that's for the people that are not blatantly listing level. Like I'm in a wheelchair. I can't even get up and stand. All right, maybe you don't have to do any more of that crazy treatment stuff because the proofs are already what is required. But 99% of people aren't there. Mephisto's in the house. Long time no see, buddy. Do disability lawyers send a summary of their client's physical limitations to the DDS for the initial disability claim? Yes, it's called your application and the DDS has it. And then if you have, well, for us, if something new comes up, it's shared. So like with us, my clients, when they're doing what they're supposed to do, report every visit in a particular message thread we have dedicated to that. And they say what the visit was for. And, oh, by the way, your function report also, yeah, that gets submitted to the DDS. And that is basically that summary. But it's helpful because outside of the application and the function report and just the records generally, if my client just went to 7 appointments in 2 weeks and told me about it, and they're supposed to do it like, yeah, Michelle knows. They're supposed to do it like, I'm like, when you get home, just go to the portal and put it in there, you know, because otherwise they forget. And then we don't do anything. We have nothing to do with it because we don't even know that. So when they send it, we actually draft a letter listing all the appointments of, say, the last two. If they're vigorous goers, they get more letters from us, more communication, as a phone call, whatever it is, to the DDS, some sort of communication where we're telling them everything that that person did. If they only go every 3 months, obviously they're not going to get us. We have nothing to report. So I feel like that is really helpful. That's probably part of the reason why we get a little bit more in initial and recon. We still have plenty that have to go to hearing, obviously, but we don't really believe in the wait it out and see if they win. Case takes longer, drags out, blah blah blah. We don't play that. It's just it's an ethics thing on our side. So I'm just reading your question again. So I can't say what other lawyers do. We do these very, literally they're triggered by the action of the client. The more the client does, the more often we do this. The less they do, the less we are able to do. And I try to say that, like, you want to see us work our butts off? Like, get to the doctor. You know what I mean? I know there is lawyers that don't do that. Probably most. You know, I just didn't work at a firm that taught you to do it the way they're doing it. You know, I started this by myself, so this is just the way we do it. So I can't really say. Like, ours are consistently summarized and sent, but in any event, there's a function report. Now, granted, I don't know if your lawyer actually helps you with the function report like we do. They might not, in which case it's you giving a summary and hopefully you left nothing out and you worded it right. The application, depending on who did it, that's a summary too. You know, so there's different snapshots and updates that are available, even if you don't do what we do. Redman says, PNT 100% vet, thank you so much for your service, Redman. And the advised worked over 40 hours on my case. Your thoughts? Oh, God, you know my thoughts, Redman. And I love you, by the way. Thank you for your service. It's like, it's the, you know, the end all be all for me and my family, you guys. So I thank you. I think if they worked 3 hours on your case and got your result, you should be paying that bill. And I explain it in that video because that's what could, if it was such that, well, it's a contingent fee and we don't pay even if we work. I don't have to pay if they do 100 hours or 40 hours or 20. I don't have to pay. But then when if they don't win, even though they worked that long, because you're trying to take it out of a contingent fee agreement. And you're trying to make it, once you win, I don't want to pay him what I agreed. But if you lost, you'd be saying, no, our agreement is I don't have to pay you unless you win, even though you put in 100 hours. And your kid can't go to summer camp. You know what I mean? Like, does anybody get what I'm saying? And you don't have to comment because I'm not trying to put you on the spot right now, but rethink it. You're not the only one that thinks this way. So I don't want to point you out. You just brought it up. So you kind of walked into it. There is playlist. If you look under, I think, attorney's fees and or representative fee, there's a playlist and it's in there. But it's just the way you need to understand how the contingent fee agreement is very protective. Oh my gosh, to the claimant. More often than not, we don't get 9,200. More often than not, when we do get 9,200, the work is far more than 9,200. So you have to understand that in this kind of profession, you do it because you love what you do. If you're going to do it right. And I know there's schmucks out there that, you know, do screwy cases, do that whole, we don't work on it until hearing, even though we're going to accept the case so that we're we've got the digs in. And then they do, if they have a 50% win rate, they think they've done wonders because they all have 3-car garages. That's why people don't like lawyers, right? There's that whole law firm of, extreme income. But that's not most, I would say, disability representatives. And if they worked 40 hours in their case, that's not cheesy. That's 40 hours. So I just think, as I said, I think in one of the videos, the money is almost found money. Now you could say, well, I could have won it on my own, which is true, potentially true if you won an initial, you know, if they didn't really do any, you know, you feel like at 40 hours, it has to gone. There was much more than that, but I just feel like this was the agreement. You were going to let them sink and get paid for nothing. None of their people would be paid except for the fact that they're going to get a paycheck from their boss who's not getting paid. If you lost, you wouldn't be paying for any of the work. And then when you win, you're trying to whittle it down to something you didn't agree to. It's just, that's really what's happening here. And I know you don't, well, maybe now you're seeing it because I'm telling you, but it's a different, you got to look at it differently because you're not looking at it properly. Okay. I would probably send a letter and say I withdraw my opposition to the fee. I made a mistake. That's me. Walk with grace. I'd rather pay more to someone who probably doesn't deserve it than know I didn't pay him enough and got away with a few bucks. That will not fly with me. Not in my life, the way I have to live it. And it makes life so much easier. It really does. Dimple says, okay, so maybe I should just go ahead and get a counselor to schedule an appointment and then send it in to hopefully avoid a CE. You might still get a CE, though. For the purpose of avoiding the CE, I mean, you might not. I mean, it will increase your chances of not having to do the CE, but more importantly, I'd rather see you have a stronger case. A better chance of prevailing than you would have without it. Okay. And you don't just want an appointment. Even though theirs is going to be a snapshot view like that, because if that's all you leave them the opportunity to do. If it's not a repeated durational where they get to know you a little bit, very little of what they say will be impactful because they don't know you. You can't know somebody in one visit. So, I know, I'm sorry, Dimple. Oh, Mephisto says, on reconsideration, does the same DDS person handle the claim? No, thank goodness. They just denied, or does a new DDS agent and a new DDS doctor handle the claim as if it were brand new? All right, so I don't know which doctor you're talking about. DDS doctor, there is really no DDS doctor, but you might be referring to the medical expert at the SSA, because I think he works for the SSA, not the state, which is the DDS. So no, the adjudicator is not the same. It's always someone different. Same office, though, and we always have an ongoing joke about, oh, yeah, what's the chance he's going to reverse his buddy down the hall on recon? Which is why it is always wise to make sure you have new stuff, a changing landscape with your treatment, to go and not just the same, like, I have my follow-up, I have nothing changed, then you're going to probably get the same result as initial. But if you had like an MRI now, so sometimes it behooves us to give the second guy an evidentiary reason to be like, maybe it shows more. Maybe the evidence is better now. And I'm talking largely objective things like MRIs, if it's physical, tests, objective tests like that, EMGs, CAT scans, whatever, of the body part. Obviously, if there's a surgery involved, if you're like, I was thinking of waiting for next year, well, then you're not going to have that evidence that it's needed and bad enough for that necessarily before recon. But that's a little more tenuous, of course, because it's surgery. But then the next question, does a new DDS agent, yes, there is a new DDS adjudicator. And DDS doctor, like I said, I think it's a federal employee doctor, unless they're contractors too. I'm trying to remember. But that would be at the federal level, I expect, when they review to determine the RFC. And that, I believe, I don't typically see the same doctor letter on both DDEs, disability determination explanations, which are the things produced on initial and refund when they deny or award. So I think it usually is a different doctor, but I don't know that it necessarily has to be. I don't know. Like, I don't tend to see the same name, but I never really made a point to take great note of that. It won't affect how I handle the case. The CE doctor, how about that one? Would that be a different one if they had to do a second CE? I don't know that answer either. I'd like to think so. Double CEs are rare anyway, so maybe, usually just do one. But yeah, you definitely get a new adjudicator. 100%. Strike Brown says, if anyone is willing, please stay positive as you wait. I'm praying that all hearts are softened to your circumstances. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. That was very nice, Trika. Trika says, I told the judge about my accommodations at work, what I did in order to work, like taking breaks every hour to apply ice pack, lidocaine patches, and left early often because I needed to take pain meds. All right, so this is going to bring up a point. Trika's saying she told the judge about accommodations she either gave to herself or they officially gave to her. If this was a time period where she, just know this. If you have accommodated work like that in your past relevant work period, that's that 5-year period they have to consider whether you could still do that job. They will take that job as accommodated and say, can she do it accommodated? Can she do accommodated today? Not the real job that it normally is, but can she do accommodated today? And that makes your case a little bit harder for the one point that they have to prove. Now, Trike, I think you said you were 45, so this really doesn't matter for you as much, because you had to climb a mountain anyway, girl, and you did it. So it didn't hurt you. But just know that if you're describing accommodated work that you successfully got that allowed you to do that job for X period of time, when they look back to decide if you pass step 4, that is it. See that redness? That will now be a job that's easier for them to prove you can still do. Doesn't mean they will prove you're still, but it's you're making your job harder. Now, if you know that you can prove it without a doubt, you can't do it accommodated. I mean, you can say it and you left the job, so the circumstances are there. But is it medically proven that would be too much? That's and you successfully did that, Trigger. But if a person doesn't have that to bring themselves down another exertional notch of capability, then that job could be the one that sinks the person. Because remember, past relevant work is as it is normally performed in the industry, or how you actually performed it. And if it's accommodated, that means it was actually easier, and that means it's harder to disprove. Just adding that in there. Doesn't affect Trika because she got an A++ on this one. Ruby says, I'm back. Good to see you back, girl. Good to see you too. Willie says, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. That is amazingly true. I mean, I've been on both sides. I've been at jobs that I hated. I was telling you guys how my dad got me when I was like 22. Being so unhappy on Sundays because I had to go to work on Mondays in the finance field in Newark, New Jersey. And he brought me a depression brochure. I'm not kidding. We're talking like 1989, 1990. And I'm like, Dad, I'm not depressed. I just hate my job. And it was full time, and I commuted an hour and 20 minutes to get, the whole, I'm going to be a little executive silliness coming out of college. And I hated it so much. That's when I quit and went to law school 2 years later. I stuck it out for 2 years, and I'm like, I'm still out of here. So I know what it's like to drag yourself to a job. And I look at young people, including my own children, who are now of working age. And Well, my daughter kind of likes her job now, but they go in with, particularly her, high expectations. You think if you're a hard worker, people are going to be nice to you and everything's going to be perfect the way it should be. Nice people are nice to nice people, right? But there's always some bad eggs in there. And sometimes it's a manager and sometimes it's a coworker that makes your life miserable. I remember having jobs that were kind of miserable, scrubbing kitchen pans and stuff like that. I worked at a catering hall and did catering. This was like in college years. And, hard work, but you got a nice paycheck at the end of the month, relatively to being unskilled and everything else. And that's not fun. I'm not a big cleaner. I just look at my office. But I had fun doing it. I worked with someone who was my best friend at the time, and we'd be working 10:30 at night, scrubbing these things and trying to make their kitchen look better. And because you're working with someone nice and you're having, you're smiling, having fun, talking, it was not bad. But if you don't have like that nice atmosphere, and all you need is one mean person to make you their biatch and pick on you, it ruins everything. I think many of us have been here. I don't know about you guys, but I know girls are sensitive to this, I think. Guys kind of let stuff roll off maybe a little bit better. At least they used to. I don't know. They're a little softer these days. But, yeah, I think I love what I do. And because, Willie, I think one of the reasons why I did it on my own is because I can't tolerate mean people. Like right now, I can just, nobody's going to be mean in my presence, And nobody that works for me, I mean, it would just not be tolerated. Like you're either with the mojo or you're not, But I know bigger companies can't do that. I get it, but I was in my 20s when I decided I was going to be solo. Ruby says, that's not true, dude. Which one's not true? So what happens if they take 10 years, then you only get SSI? All right, I don't know if you were here when I answered that, Ruby. So watch the replay if you want. I totally addressed that, I think. You might have had to step out. I was actually answering your question, actually, and pointing out ramifications and such. Like it says, I know they won't tell me what all to look out for. By the way, we're 1 hour in, guys. I know they won't tell me what all to look out for. What is really next? I've read things about Medicare coming out and that my son may be able to get benefits also. Oh my goodness. Yes. They might not tell you. So if you have a minor child or who was minor in high school and under 19 or just under 18 and under 19 or under 18 altogether, yeah, there should be some back benefits. If there's back benefits to you, there will be back benefits to them, but you have to make that application. And you have to do it now, as soon as you win, because it's not going to be retroactive forever. So right now, he should get it all the way back to when you got it. But if you delay and forget, and a year goes by, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I give you this job. They're like, sorry, and you're going to get it until, he or she hits 18, or if they're still in high school, 19. And I think it ends like when they graduate, but they might give them 2 months into the summer. Don't hold me to it. So it's nice. It's nice if you have bills to pay, because, and I just did a video on this, guys, because someone had asked about, it didn't come out yet, the video, though. It's a solo. They asked if I could talk about when adult kids accuse their parent of stealing their SSD child benefits when they were growing up that they should have now in their hand when they're 18 or 20 or whatever. So I went to town on that one because, very short of the very rare situation where a parent isn't even the custodial parent, but they're considered the rep payee for the kid because no one did the job of going to the SSA and changing it. And they've been collecting this money for years, but they haven't even seen the kid. They don't spend it on the kid. They don't live with the kid. It's supposed to be with the custodial person, even if it's not a parent. Those are rare. They happen. I report on those frauds a lot. But that's probably, what percentage? Like 1/4%? I don't know. I'm making that up, but it's something very low. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's a low amount of, percentage wise. So you can use the money that you get in back benefits for the child. If you put out money for the shelter and everything he needs for his portion of the rent or the utilities or the stuff, that can be paid back to you. Because remember, that money, the auxiliary benefits from the part paid out for him is for his basic survival needs. Now, if you don't need to do that, if you're like, well, I did it, but I scrounged out of my savings, and there are sound ways to preserve that money if you don't think you need it for bills now, without necessarily leaving it in a big lottery winning for him when he hits 18, which he might go below, because who knows if he's going to be responsible. So there are smart ways to do that, which I'm not going to go into here, but ways where, because if you have a sum of money as a rep payee for him, and he turns 18, SSA is going to say, send us that money back. We'll pay it to him. And they will, but then you have a teenager with a crap load of money, and many teenagers cannot handle that kind of money responsibly. They'll either do something bad with it, or they'll do something stupid with it, and then they won't have it later, and they're going to look back when they're 30 and go, damn, I could have used that for a down payment on a house. Like you as the adult can do smart things to make it legitimately where he, it's used for his things. And then you could have your own savings account that now is bigger because you didn't have to spend money on his rent because he paid his portion himself. You as the rep payee made that happen. And now you could have a nest egg for him later, should you choose, because it's in your name at that point. All right. I said I wasn't going to go into it, and then I did a little bit. Medicare. Okay. So did you see that bleep out? That was it's an internet. I don't know. Our internet's terrible around here. So Medicare, you want to keep an eye on, and there is that little tricky glitch. Like if you have now a little bit too much money, you can't get the Medicaid. You're like, well, I have no Medicaid, and my SSD barely covers I can support myself now, basically, tightly, but where am I going to come up to go, $2,000 for a health insurance policy? So there's a little bit of a gap there that I'd like to see some brilliant mind create legislation that would alleviate that 2-year gap before you get in some way, not for the people that can afford it, wealthy, people, or if you have a spouse who has health benefits that you could pay a little bit more in contributions, get family, so the spouse is on there, then you don't need it either. But for everybody else, Ruby Williams says, funny bird. Yeah, she can be funny. She's being kind of mellow now, though. She's taking a nap. She does to do that after she has some sort of treat. Chris F is in the house. Hi, Chris. I don't think we've met. Chris says, what time was this, by the way? 1:18. Oh, yeah. Sorry. It's going to be a little later, so hopefully you come back. My friend has her hearing date June 15th with ALJ Frank Barletta in Wilkes-Barre. I know who that is. That's my local. Her lawyer has not gone over anything to prepare her for court. Is this normal? June 15th. We generally have our hearing prep a day to 5 days before the hearing. Ideally, like 2 days, but sometimes, schedules and stuff. Because I want it to be fresh in their mind. If I did it a month beforehand, and now we're getting, it's less than a month now for them, but maybe they do the same. I assume he's going to call her at some point. Yeah, because If you do it too early, the person's going to keep re-asking the same questions because, we don't remember as well. So, and then for us, the hearing prep is generally, it can take a long time. It can take half an afternoon, because we go over what's going to happen at the hearing. We go over what likely questions might come out. We kind of go a little wide on those questions just to cover what we hope is everything possible. And then, of course, some of those things never get asked. And then we go over things as part of those questions as well. If it doesn't come up by the judge, I want to bring it up when I do my direct so that it's something I think he needs to know. And I want my client to be able to say it to his face and explain it and stuff. Frank Barletta. It's so funny. Haven't had in-person hearings since COVID. I don't miss them at all. That was like a full day's event for me. Now it's like, oh, I got a hearing. Okay. It's the travel, and I always used to get there at least an hour and a half early because that's my nature. And my client would get there at least an hour early so that I could put my flag in a private room, and we'd have it, till we're done and I'm still hearing. Just to do any loose ends or, calm her nerves or whatever. So those days are kind of over. And everyone just gets to stay in the comfort of their own office or home. And I think it's way less stressful on the client than managing to get a ride, sometimes an hour away and all that. Simple says, yes, ma'am, that's how you are. But this is also why I'm like a little sister. Yeah, you're not that much older than me. So there. Really, is it funny? Delia. Oh, Delia. Hi, Delia. Delia says, good morning, everyone. Good morning to you too, my dear. Trika says, I had my second MRI that showed my cervical radiculopathy got worse. Neurosurgeon recommended surgery at that point in January 2025. You see what I'm saying, guys? So hers, she was under 50. Hers was continuing with that follow-up. Well, I know I have, radiculopathy, so what's the point of getting another? I always say get them every year. Push for that. Push, push, push. You have to really be a squeaky wheel because those things do get worse. And look at her, 45 years old, and this proved that her neck was damaged enough. It was getting worse. Thank you for that example, Trika, because that is exactly what I tell people. Like, you just got to keep repeating periodically those diagnostics and then keep repeating therapies, not just going and learn, if there is a therapy that might potentially, even if it's not going to work, but the medical profession says this could possibly help a little bit, I highly suggest you do it. I do. When there's a will, there's a way. So do it. Unless there's some grave reason why you shouldn't, and then your doctor probably wouldn't be recommending it, because that's going to build your evidence. And it's all about evidence, guys. This is all legal findings, facts and law. So feelings don't really matter. Yahoo is in the house. No, AU. I said Yahoo. Hope you've been well. Yes, I have. Thank you. I wanted to ask if the 3373, that's the function report, guys, which you provided great help on, is a standard procedure after 3 years or more. You're still in what stage? If they do it used to be they would only do it on recon. Then several years ago, when things got really long and drawn out, and recon and initial were taking a long time, they started asking for them twice. So you might have to do it twice. If you're on recon, you'll probably have to do it. If you're an ALJ, the ALJ doesn't, because you're going to be coming in and testifying for him. That's it. The next thing on his thing is when you're in front of me, we're going to learn about what your functional complaints are. Updated. So they don't ask for it. Striker goes on to say, my first MRI was done in January of 2024, and my spinal stenosis was mild. So did it say severe or moderate in January, Trika, if you're still here? I'm curious. Did it go from mild to moderate? I don't know if you said it. You said it got worse, but you don't say whether the spinal stenosis, I don't think, what the verbiage was. How was it described? That's what it's about. When I see mild, from an evidentiary point of view, I'm like, well, there's spinal stenosis, like canal stenosis. So that's meaningful. But then when it's mild, it's less meaningful. And I do think those things tend to get worse. It's like a degeneration. So I always push for, if I can, annual updates. Yeah, because if the word changes, that might be an argument to be made. Not only is it worse, it's worsening. Jasmine's in the house. Hi, Jasmine. I don't think we've met, have we? Hello, I have SSDI disabled adult child. Does this convert to retirement at age 67 like SSDI does? Good question. It doesn't stop. I will tell you that, based on age. I'm just wondering, does it? I don't think it turns into. Or maybe it does. Good question. I honestly don't know. In name, does it? I mean, the amount stays the same. So, it continues. I just didn't know what they legally label it as. I don't know. But you don't have to worry about it going away based on age. So it's not temporary like that. There's other ways your child could lose it, but that's not one of them, right? I'm sorry I don't have that answer. I don't think. Yeah, I'm like, huh. Thank you. I'm here for life, Joy. Aw, I know my journey isn't over and you've been a huge help for my nerves. Oh my gosh, thank you. Yeah, right? Because there's life after the SSA process. So now's the time to make it, like, own it. I always say, like, own it, own it. Particularly if you still can get some, days that are reasonably comfortable to enjoy, right? You know how to maybe avoid aggravating the conditions, and then you can figure out what activities in life will fit into the capacities of remaining comfortable while you do them. I know there's some people who are not able to do that. I don't think it's the majority, but there's some that the conditions are so disabling and uncomfortable with any kind of movement that they are largely incapacitated, not even for like gentle little things. But I don't think that's the majority, and my heart breaks for them. But yeah, like now's the enjoy, Trika says, I watched all the playlists. LOL. I realized I should have watched it first before I applied. I may not have gotten denied on my first appeal. I really screwed up on my forms. Well, it worked out in the end. So that's an amazing share, I'm really, really just so glad that they're helping. I know there's a lot of them, so people are probably like, I am not watching all those. Well, while you're sitting on your butt doing nothing anyway, because you're not working, sometimes it's like, maybe you just should. Just let it go in one ear, out the other. Sometimes the osmosis, what we hear sticks, even if we're not paying gross attention and concentrating on it. Like they don't necessarily have to be that, they can just be that. You hear things, Ick Meyer's in the house. Hello there, Ick. Would DDS ever ask to amend the onset date in the initial or reconsideration stage? I've never seen it. Because they don't have to. They don't have to. If they find you disabled at any point during the period that you're insured, which is usually the whole period, because you're usually the DLIs in the future, they will grant you disability as of that date. They don't have to ask for an amendment. For whatever reason that's different. Well, the judge doesn't have to either. He can just make it partially favorable, as can they. They don't ask for an amendment. He does it, I think, because that way he can give a fully favorable, which from his perspective, the chance of you appealing after you actually said you wanted this is slim, and now he's not subject to an appeal that's going to go up to the appeals council. Right? So I think they have an incentive to get you to agree to amend your onset so they can grant you everything you wish for, which is the amended onset now. So DDS, no, they don't ask. They're going to make their finding. So it's only in hearing, and it's not after hearing. You do it before your hearing. Trika says, I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah, well, none of us did till we learned, right? I didn't either. I didn't even know this was a field until the day I learned it was a legal field. I mean, they don't teach us this in high school or college. They didn't teach it in law school. I wonder if they have it now in law schools. I mean, we have CLEs for it now. They didn't have that when I started either. I had to learn it all on my own. Now we have continuing legal education. I even did one or two. I did a couple for whatever group, bar association or something, but it didn't used to be that way. Focus Lady says, question, is everyone kicked off of SSDI getting an overpayment? And why is it happening 18 months after getting cut off when the person was below SGA? Sounds like you're talking about a specific person. No, you don't necessarily get kicked off of SSDI with getting an overpayment. For instance, if you are in your extended period of eligibility, that period, and you worked over SGA here and there, you're going to have an overpayment for those months, but you're going to still be on SSDI unless you need a CDR and it's proven that you're actually improved and able to work full-time at something. So it sounds like it might be happening to you. Are we talking about a specific thing? 18 months after getting cut off when the person was below. Well, you're cut off for what reason? Remember, there's medical reasons someone's cut off because their medical records no longer indicate that they're disabled. You know, they might still be impaired, but they're clearly not as bad off as they were according to the medical records. The way that person continued to have them develop, everything looks better. And that would be likely what it is, because if you're below SJ, it's not going to be for being over SJ. However, if you were over trial work period amounts for 9 months, you were then put into your extended period of eligibility for 3 years, and any of those months that you were over SGA would be owed back. And then just to add on to that, the month after your extended period of eligibility ends, and that's a 3-year period, if you work SGA that month or any month thereafter, the first time you do, you're off of SSD. You'd have to reapply or do an expedited reinstatement eventually. Why is it happening 18 months after getting cut off? Oh, you got cut off for some reason, and then they did the math, and you know, by the time the IRS gets some of the information, it can be the following year, and then someone has to be working on it. You have an overpayment. Now, the question is, too, was the overpayment because they retrospectively said, you were no longer disabled a year and a half ago? All these people, you've improved. That would be a little annoying. I would appeal that because, well, why didn't you tell me that you thought I medically improved? You know what I mean? Like, they need to give notice, and it shouldn't be going back 12 years. Like, that's the onus should be on them. So I think there's something going on with, you know, that you might not be able to explain here. Maybe, you know, you don't know what it is, but otherwise it's too hard to connect which thing caused which thing. And it could be a variety of different ways. Nick Meyer says, will DDS suggest amending the onset date at initial or reconsideration? Oh, you already asked me this. No, you already asked that. Right? Nick Meyer. Focus Lady says, if severe mental illness causes someone to be afraid to go to the doctor or visit the Social Security office, is that considered to be a listed condition? No. Your alleged symptoms are not listings. It's what's it's what shows up in the medical records to prove you meet a listing. So if you don't go to the doctor and you have no medical records, you are never going to meet a listing for the most part. All right. You know, some people are afraid to go to the doctor and still get there. Or they have to be, if someone is that severely mentally ill, which, by the way, is really severely mentally ill, it might be an agoraphobia even, then sometimes the best bet is to be voluntarily or otherwise committed to a psychiatric hospital to be stabilized on the proper, if there is such a thing, proper medication regime, so that you can at least have a little bit more control over your decisions to go to the doctor and not have a heart attack when doing so. So I know people are like, I don't want to go to the hospital. Well, all right, it's free. It's a free country. I'd rather not prove my case or get stabilized so I can avoid the, you know, I mean, they can knock you out. I mean, it's a horrible choice. I get it, but it is a choice. You know, we either bite the bullet and do what we have to do to get the evidence, or we don't. And then if we don't, and we're that severely mentally ill, I do think something's going to catch up most likely to the person eventually. And then there could be an involuntary commitment or something like that. So, you know, because think about it. If it wasn't for the fact that if someone has agoraphobia and they won't leave their house, that's really severe, right? Question is, it's very hard to prove because they're not going to the doctor. And I've had those cases. Think about it. If they don't have someone catering to them, giving them food, paying for the heat, paying to fix the roof, rent, mortgage, whatever, they would be dead, is what they're saying. I would be dead if I didn't have family supporting me. And that's pretty significant. And I don't know at what point the person says, this is ridiculous. I'm practically dead, but for them propping me up, I really need to get to a hospital. You know, get some really, what do they call it? Intensive inpatient. Because obviously the outpatient isn't working for them. You know. And I know those are tough words to say, but I'm just saying the facts, you know, in terms of evidence. You either get it or you don't get it. And you make a choice, you know. And sometimes the choice is hard, particularly if you have agoraphobia, but then sometimes to make other more difficult choices. The ROI from the 1920 way outweighs, the return on investment from the 9200 way outweighs the fee, particularly when you did $30,000 worth of work and you only get paid $9,200. Willie, that happens too. I've had cases for 7 years. I've had where I won't dump the person, so I'm going through multiple hearings, multiple administrative levels, redoing. Usually this is a young person, granted, but you know, you don't want to let somebody down. And so, yeah, this is what people are forgetting. In many cases, even a standard case, you do way more than $9,200 worth of work. Unless you're supposed to be getting paid, you know, minimum wage from back when I got minimum wage, you know, in high school, $3 and something, was it? $3.15? Did it raise up to $3.50? So, yeah, I'm showing my age. But, yeah. To finish the statement, the return on investment from the 9,200 way outweighs the fee, i.e. a win could net you $500K over the life of the benefit. That's a nice math way to explain it, Willie. I don't disagree with you. You're paying 1.8% of your award. There you go. See, that's another way to look at it for Redman if he's still here. I hope I didn't take him off. I just wanted him to understand that, and many, many people have the same perception, you know, and that's why I did that video a while back. I don't know if any of you guys remember it. Yeah, I definitely have it's like a teenage pimple. Huh. I wonder what. I'm a little too old for that. And again, they always have to remember that if they put in the work and you lost, which often, most of the losses are due to a failure on the part of the client, I will tell you. So The lawyer is putting in the work, the client's falling down the job, and the case gets lost, and the lawyer doesn't get to recoup his wages, for his work. And the client doesn't have to pay, even though the client asked him to do it. So that's where that whole contingent, you got to understand the contingent fee nature. It's to protect the clients, because there are unscrupulous lawyers, right? But to protect the clients from never having to go broke on their fee, never, because it's going to be coming out only from their past benefits that they didn't have before. And now they have it, so they can't say they don't have the money to pay it. And it's 25%. It's not even the same as personal injury, which is what, 33%? In some states, it's even higher. And it's capped at the $9,200. Personal injury is not capped at $9,200. Divorces are not capped at $9,200. I mean, think about it. So I'm not knocking it. I have no problem with the way it is. The only problem I had over the years, they went 13 years without raising that cap. Imagine if you guys got your benefits and there was no COLA. That is a problem. That's an unfair problem. I think there needs to be a COLA. The same exact COLA that applies to everything else needs to apply to this too. And then they wouldn't have to suddenly go crazy, because they did in a very helpful way. We were bleeding good representatives. The good ones that work really hard were quitting in droves from this profession. So when you see all the crappy ones out there, that's why. Because the fee was $5,300 forever. Then they raised it to $6,000. I'm trying to think what year. 13. I think it went 13 years. Was it 13 years from 5,300 to 6,000? Because 5,300 is when I started. So at some point shortly thereafter, they raised it to 6,000. Or no, they did go 13 years and then 6,000. And then 7,200, and then a couple years later, the 9,200, in an effort to try to catch it up with what the COLA would have been. They didn't catch it up, but they certainly significantly changed it. And honestly, without the 9,200 fees, you have to quit it. You have to quit this line of work. You really do, because we have fees that are. What did I just get? 2 years on the job, $750 about. And by the way, that was because the person was collecting early retirement. I took her case. Sometimes I just, those are the ones that we have to limit how many we take. But, I really like to see people not have to take early retirement and get the full kit and caboodle, the 67 age one. But they can't. So I try to take some of them. And I know it's going to be several $1,000s of free work. But then you just know, you just gave that person, hopefully another 20 years with an extra, so what would hers be? I don't even try to remember. Like an extra $800 a month in her pocket, every month. Like that's a huge difference in your ability to live a quality life if you're just like us regular sloths who are relying on little the savings over the lifetime and their eventual Social Security. So got to keep those limited, but we do take them when we have, we kind of like have a certain amount, and then when one comes out, we take another one, that kind of thing. But yeah, so, it's easy to miss how this whole thing works with contingent fees. But your point is very well taken, Willie. I appreciate that share, because you kind of showed some people some stuff. Dimple says, I just saw an advertisement on TV earlier today saying, have you been denied SSDI? We want to help people who have been denied disability. I was thinking, yeah, I bet you want the extra back pay. I think they're cheesy. Well, no, that one is not even that bad. How about the ones simple that say, you could be getting up to $4,500 from SSDI if you're disabled and haven't applied yet. Call us. And that is so misleading, because this portion of the population of disabled people that were workers actually have paid in to get that kind of benefit. That's the wealthier worker, the higher income person that's going to get that 4,000 something benefit if they prevail. What is that? Less than 1%? I don't know. So to use that as their ad, you, Dimple, could be getting, could be getting 4,500. It's like, no, she couldn't. I mean, I'm sure you had a great income and everything, but you know what I mean? Those are the people that always made more than the max that gets taxed. And right now, what is that, like 180,000 or something like that a year? Most people don't make that much. You know, some do, some, and you have to do it for 35 years. Like you have to make that high amount all the years. So those are the ones that I want to, you see them on the internet. And I'm like, how do you even like face yourself in the mirror? You know, think you have a maker. I don't know. I don't know how they could do that. Bill F is in the house. Hi, Bill. That's Bill F, right? Nice to see you, Bill. I don't think we've met. My LTD company, so that's his long-term disability company, said they had trouble getting medical records for COPD and shoulder injury pre-main issue back surgery. Should I preemptively? Yes. Well, you said you're LTD. Are you talking about SSDI or LTD? Because they're two different things. Did you already send the copies to the LTD? Or did they already get them? Should I preventively send it? If you're self-representing, you're going to be wanting to be on the horn with that adjudicator every few weeks, maybe even month, to double check what's come in and stay on top of them. If you send now, if these are past records that you're no longer treating for, but they're relevant in the past, maybe you have a new COPD doctor, so these are going to be a set finite number of records and they're not going to be expanding, then it's not so bad if you go get them and you send them to the DDS. Do not send them to your field office. You want to upload them right to the DDS. And the reason I say that is because if you're still treating with that COPD doctor and you send what's originated already till today, but you continue to see them, there's a decent chance that adjudicator is not going to order them again, is never going to get the updates in the next few months because you so kindly preempted it. I don't think that's right of them. I think they use it as an excuse not to see if there's additional treatment. Some of them are good. They'll be like, hey, so we have the records up to February 2026. Has he had any more visits with Dr. Jones, COPD? And then, you know, we of course say, well, I already send those letters anyway. So every time he did it, and if my client properly does what we tell him to do, those things are going to be happening behind the scenes. And the adjudicator, if they look in their file, which is a whole nother failure, will see that they've been told, you know. So again, if it's a COPD doctor that you've already stopped seeing, it's safe to send. If you're still seeing them, you can, but know that you might be preempting them from getting the updates. And they should get the updates, right? If you call them and say, I sent you up through so-and-so, this is what I had, but I'm still treating with him. So can you please order the updates in a month or whatever? Because I'll have another visit in 3 weeks. You know, you could say that. Whether they do it or not is another story, but you could say that. And I would put it in writing too, fax it too. Paper trail, paper trail, paper trail. Rain Gal says, see. What are you saying, Rain Gal? See you later. Just making it too far. Hey, good to see you, Just. Good morning. I submitted an OTR with the ALJ. After remanded back to a different ALJ. How can I get a faster decision? You can't. You're trying to rush the ALJ who has already, well, you're going to a different ALJ, you said, but why? I don't understand why you're trying to rush them, because they need to look at everything competently, because when they do the decision, they have to cite and pinpoint cite to the evidence that supports their decision. So if they don't have the time to get the pinpoint sites, they can't put in pinpoints for favorable statements that would support an award because you haven't given them time. So if they just don't put them in, then it's going to be denial. So I always say, everyone is like, let's hurry up and get that denial. Like, what are you doing? I don't recommend doing that. When it's in an ALJ, you let it ride. First of all, they've got people over them banging the drum if their decisions are coming out late. They have accountability, way more so than the lower levels, I believe. So I think you got a person making a decision on your claim, and you're going to go be a pushy, kind of pushy or a bully and saying, "Whoop, faster, faster." You know, like it's like, I don't know. What are you doing in here? I didn't even know you were in here. Hold on a second, guys. I gotta let this annoying dog out. What are you doing? Those are idiots. Gracias. Dogs are, well, you know how I feel, guys. Pet free in 5 years. That's my estimation. You know, that rainbow. That's all I'm talking about. But you know, you're being professionally rude to the people that are working hard to get the job done to make a proper decision on your case. Is that really the yes, and in theory it shouldn't matter, and it probably doesn't. But what if it does? What if it's like, wow, this guy, you know, he said he had some cognitive limitations, but he's able to make a congressional inquiry. That's a little bit more able than what he suggested. And he put together an OTR. He's at it. I'm thinking a desk job might be right up his alley. I mean, think about what you're doing, right? Now, if you have a lawyer doing it, it's a little differently, because then you know, no one could say you actually did. Anyway, I just feel like I never do that at the hearing level. The most I'll do is talk to a clerk, and this is I don't even know if I'm trying to think if I've ever even done it. I think I have, maybe once. Is there anything you're waiting on us for? Is the hearing still open? And you know, they'll say, oh, it's just waiting in the pool for decision writers. Because remember, the judge doesn't make the decision. I mean, he makes the decision. He does not write the decision. So they have to wait for an opening with the pool of decision writers, and then each one in order. And so then his gets, you know, it's kind of the assembly line. So that would not be something I would be rushing to do. And the funny thing about an OTR, they already know they can do an OTR. They don't need your permission. They chose not to. And maybe they will change your mind, because you don't know when they're exactly looking at it for the possibility of an OTR. Is it when it first walks in the door? Is it later? You know, you don't know. But that's just not the way I would do it. Probably won't make a difference for you, but I'm just saying, what if? Dan says, Denab Rants says, so I spoke to SS, and by the way, I don't know if we've met, so it's nice to meet you. I spoke to Social Security. They called for a quality assurance review. Called? That's unusual. And went over, all right, that's not quality. That's not federal. Well, it could be federal quality review. They got booted because the DDS or the field office didn't get all the information they should have, and it was audited. So that could happen. And I need to know more about the work, and it's often definitely related to work, to determine onset date. At the end, he informed me of the onset date, and he sent to, I don't know what that is, LCLSS for CAL. It sounds good. Yeah, it does sound good. I'm not sure what that last part of your statement is, but I think you maybe mean the payment center for the calculations and the payments to be made. Yeah, that definitely sounds good. He already told you the onset, so he kind of confirmed. So that's good. Yeah, so what Dan is saying is, and how this usually works behind the scenes is the adjudicator awarded, you know, and it got pulled for audit, because they do look at things to make sure that, was the person still insured, you know? Wait a minute, where'd they get that onset date? It looks like he was working. It says here that he was working till August, but you have onset date of July. How can it be? And they just confirm, oh, because I only worked 3 days in July and it was under SGA. You know, it could be anything like that. But it is very often related to work history, because they don't want to be paying someone earlier than when they were legally entitled to be paid, because that's how the funds get depleted, contrary to how the calculations were designed for taxation purposes to make enough money in that account, in the funds, to pay everybody as it has been predicted. So you have to always have the right job done, or else now you're going outside of the variables. Rangal says, chatted with an SSA rep today to get my DLI, and after reading my record, he said, you definitely need to appeal. That's good news, right? No, because, well, he's right. But the SSA clerk of the office doesn't see your medical record, so, you know, they should say that to everybody. You know, if you're denied and you think you're disabled, you should appeal. Sure. I mean, that to me just sounds like proper clerk language. Some don't say it at all, but he didn't review your medicals. So he doesn't really know what you got going on impairment-wise or medical-wise. I mean, he could know what your application says. I've got arthritis, I've got this, I've got that. You know, he could see the basics, but he has no idea about your evidence and whether any of it's true. None, because it doesn't review your entire medical record. Remember, that's done at the other office. Swimming with the fishies. My husband's granddaughter is 18 years old and is under guardianship of her parents due to severe autism. Are their salaries considered when determining calculation of her Social Security benefits? All right, let's read this one again. My husband's granddaughter is 18 years old. Okay. You don't mention whether she's trying to seek DAC. At 18, she could finally do that. Are their salaries considered in determining calculations of her Social? So you're saying she has Social Security benefits, or does she have is she filing for SSI? Remember, SSI is Supplemental Security Income. It is not Social Security Disability. It is not Social Security at all. It's a welfare program, not Social Security at all. It's just handled by the same agency because they're already doing the finding of disability, which is the same for both programs. So she could be, normally when someone is 18 and disabled in their mind, or the parent, the parent, they file usually, unless they have a trust fund that's not excluded, or or a bank account, that child, that 18-year-old now, they're going to file usually for SSI and DAC. DAC is part of Social Security. SSI is not. And no, for either one of them, the parents' salaries are not relevant. When she was 17 and 364 days, it did count because she was a minor. Now she's not a minor. She's an adult. So their income does not matter. She's on her own adult income capacity. And that's why children who can't get SSI as children because their parents are, not indigent, can then get it at 18. And again, that's if people planned properly and didn't put a lot of assets in her name. When she was growing up, oh, we're going to put like the investment house going to be in her name, because now she can't get SSI because that's a resource that she could sell to support herself instead of having the taxpayers carry her. For DAC, it doesn't matter how wealthy she is. So that wouldn't matter for that either, the resources. Because that DAC is Social Security Disability. Well, it's an auxiliary benefit off of a parent's disability retirement, or if they passed away, it's a survivor benefit. So they already bought and paid the insurance. It's not welfare, just like it wouldn't be for a spousal benefit or anything else. So the person doesn't have to be poor any more poor than if they were on SSD, themselves on their own work record. There are some other parameters, though, just as a reminder for DAC. They can't be married to someone who's not also SS disabled. Because when we get married, we are now becoming the financial dependent mutually of our spouse. So you're not now a person needing to be a dependent of the parent, because you just replace the parent with a spouse. When we move and marry out, we are no longer under the under the tutelage of our parents. So the marriage thing is a, I know people don't understand it. I think it's very unfair. I totally get it. Because you get married, just like in the rest of the world, your parents no longer have to foot your bill. And so the insurance doesn't apply to that. If they wanted to change it in some way, I could get it. But then they have to change some things because remember, the calculations for how we pay our taxes into the Social Security Fund are all designed to provide sufficient funds for the programs as they are designed. We're going to change the amount of benefits coming out to increase it, so Jack people can get it when they're married to a rich man. They can still get this dependent benefit from their parent. Then they're going to have to change the taxation for that and make more money go into the fund for that. Because in theory, almost every Jack person would probably get married. You know what I mean? So just always think of that when we're always saying we want to take more, add to this, blah, blah, blah. It's got to come from someplace. I'm a math person, can you tell? But it's like gravity. 2 + 2 is 4. It's always going to be. Now, Brant says, got a call from the site to confirm onset date. Oops. Okay, that's a duplicate question. Yes, I think you're doing good there. BP. Chris says, okay, that makes sense to make it fresh in her mind. Yeah, but they should, I don't know if they have a lot of communication during the pendency of the case. It always comes up long before hearing, it's in all my videos and stuff anyway, and it might be in our facts that our clients get. Before the hearing, if we have to go to hearing, we'll have our pre-hearing specific conference, within days of the hearing. So Corey says, I got less. Nice to see you, Corey. I don't think we've met. I got less than half a skull left and got turned down 4 times and I'm 51. Well, look at it. Remember, it's not the diagnosis. It's what you can and cannot do. Here you can type or dictate, So the brain power is obviously still going on. If there are physical repercussions, then the physical may be what you would have to focus on. But if it's just a diagnosis of half my skull is gone, but I can do everything normally, then it's not going to matter because it's not disabling. Does that make sense? And if you got turned down 4 times, I wonder if you're still insured for SSD, like the disability insurance that you maybe worked for when you were younger before you got hurt. I hope so. Hi, Valerie. I haven't seen you in a while. Good morning. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm getting to you probably way later. Yeah, it's like 2:48 now, and you did this at 2:09. AU says, I'm on renewal since I am an established beneficiary that's already been getting benefits. This is my first renewal. Okay. Renewal. I'm not sure what you need by your renewal. Corey says, mine happened in 2020. Your accident, Corey? Was it an accident? An injury to the head? Here we go. Corey's sharing it. Hit with a piece of lumber sticking out of the guy's car. Good Lord. Well, I'm glad you're still here with us because goodness knows that could be fatal, right? Trika Brown says it went from mild stenosis in January of 2024 when she was denied to moderate by January of 2025. And just to refresh you guys, she was then awarded on recon as of January 25 because now it showed that it was worse than just mild. Oh, and then it showed severe at the time of surgery a mere 4 months later. Okay, so that judge did everything he's supposed to do. Not the judge, was that the DDS, right? Or was it the judge? Yeah. Oh, it was the judge, right? Yeah, that's like textbook how those continued MRIs, and you got them within 5 months of each other, the second set, right? And see what that showed, guys. It went from moderate to severe in 5 months. That made a huge difference in our case. Treat, treat, treat. Diagnostics, diagnostics, diagnostics. All right, Valerie says, I was wondering if you would make a video on a certain topic. What if a mental health counselor or anyone in that field asked you to do something against your religious beliefs? Non-compliance. No, I would say, I don't even know if I need to do a video, but I would just say right here, non-compliance is when you don't have good reason. Religious, bona fide religious refusal, if it's expressed, I mean, you got to explain it, shouldn't be non-compliance. And I don't think it would be. However, that doesn't mean you're going to have the strongest of evidence. So you might lose due to lack of evidence, but it wouldn't be due to non-compliance. Corey says he was in a coma for 2 months. This is a TBI. The titanium plate that they put in my head was as big as my hand. I am so glad you're still with us, Corey. Civil Chick is in the house. Hi, Civil. Haven't seen you in a while. Hope everyone is doing well. You as well, my dear. SSI does switch over to retirement. No. All right, so I'm just going to clear this up. SSI, this is the statement. SSI does switch over to retirement at your retirement age, but the amount of pay does not change if there is no work history. Okay, so this is not accurate as stated, but I think what you mean might be this. SSI itself doesn't switch to anything. If at 62, not full retirement age, someone is on SSI, they are going to essentially constructively count, at the very least, the benefit you get at 62 from your SSD as income that you have access to, and that can eliminate your SSI. Sometimes it is not high enough to eliminate the SSI because a person's age 62 amount is, say, $700, and SSI is almost $1,000, and they're going to have both early retirement and SSI. But they will force you to, they won't give you the SSI unless you take the SSD, the SSR, the early retirement, because you have it at your access, and the taxpayer should not be, giving you the welfare of the SSI. So it doesn't switch. It's just a requirement that you take the other one. And again, it doesn't switch you because you might actually have both. SSD, on the other hand, nothing happens at 62. You continue taking it to 67. Then it stops, and it changes in name only to retirement, and you get your full amount that you've been getting, which was your full retirement amount in essence, and it discontinues. No need to ever take it at 62 if you're on SSD. And the part about you say about the amount of pay does not change if there is no work history, I think you're referring to SSD switching to full retirement age, not SSI. Because, yeah, well, there'll be COLAs too, cost of living adjustments and stuff like that. But exactly, it's essentially the same. You're basically, when you took the SSD, you were given your full Social Security insurance amount that you would earn through your pay. You're getting it early. You're not getting it discounted because this is not optional where you're deciding to take it early. You were disabled and unable to make it to 67. Okay, guys, we've got about 6 minutes to the 2-hour mark. Valerie says, I meant to say, would it be considered non-compliance if you're asked to do something against your religious beliefs? Yeah, I think I answered that, right? If you explain it and you can't just make up some pretend religious, some pretend thing. It's got to be kind of like a established part of a religion, is my guess. And it should not be considered non-compliance. Again, it doesn't help your case because you're not doing, what might, let's say it's a diagnostic that would show how severe something is. And for whatever reason, this particular religion, you can't be in a machine like that. then yeah, it might not be non-compliance if that's truly a tenet of that religion. But now you don't have proof that your condition got worse, and you don't have no proof that you're disabled. So you know what I mean? Like, the non-compliance is a problem, but the lack of evidence might be the bigger problem. Then Rand says, my random QA review at the end of wage and time verification told me onset date and said it now goes to local SS office for distribution calculation. I think you won. That sounds like a win to me, Dan. P.S. Agoraphobia is part of my diagnosis by CE early in. Okay, so if it was only diagnosed by a CE, it doesn't sound like it's considered very severe, but it sounds like you won. Are you over 50 by chance? Because I would like to think that if you had agoraphobia, you would somehow be getting some sort of telehealth. But are you saying that, no, I never went to a doctor, but how'd you get to the CE? Just wondering. Because we can have various levels of agoraphobia. Some people, I had one guy, well, he did leave his house every morning to drive his nearly blind wife to work. And then he stayed in the house. I think there was like tinfoil over the windows. I'm not kidding. It was in Jersey. I could barely get him to talk to me on the phone because he was afraid things were coming into the phone line. It was like a paranoia thing. So it was like obviously multiple things. He was afraid to go outside, but he would get in the car. He would take her to work and he'd go straight home. He wouldn't go to a store or anything. He wouldn't go to the doctor. He was over 50, which might have helped, I guess. I knew it was extremely severe. I knew it was real. It was true. And believe it or not, I went on like recon. The adjudicator, well, the doctor he had been seeing really went to town on describing how utterly horrible it was and how, you know, it was such a severe kind of situation. But I don't even know how people live like that. I mean, it was so sad. I mean, sweet, sweet person and just so paranoid. I mean, if you think about it, it's like hallucinating all the time, you know. Christina's in the house. Hi, Christina. Civil Chick says, could there be an overlap with the 1-year cochlear implant and the 5-month waiting period? Surgery in August 2025, retired. 5 months later. Is there a way to count the 5-month period as part of the year? You know, I doubt it. I mean, you're working and earning money. So you couldn't even be found they didn't find you disabled because they see, you know, when they do the sequential evaluation process, if you were earning the money until end of January, it doesn't matter that you had your cochlear back in August. They never get to that point because you missed step one. Step one, you're denied SGA every month. Oh, it's good. It's February. No SGA. So now we can look at her medicals. Oh, she had a cochlear in the last year. Oh, she's disabled. You know, you follow what I'm saying? So I don't think that's going to be possible. Christina says, please share the live stream. Dimple says, once I finally get approved, I'll be paying your tip in coffee. You're on. Do I have to pay tax on that, Dimple? Dolphin says, regards of the attorney fee, I'm okay with it, R&D. I do have a problem with paying the tax on it. Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I don't know anything. You'd have to talk to a tax accountant about this, but it's kind of like a business endeavor, filing for SSD, even though we're personal people. Can it be written off as a, probably not with our luck, but if you think about it, Dolphin, if you get your God, can I think of an example? Probably not. You sue your employer for unpaid wages. You get a $10,000, whether you settle or prove it in court or whatever. $10,000, got it back. Okay, now you got it back. I don't know if it's going to work. My logic here. You use $2,000 of it to pay the lawyer that helped you get the $10,000. You're saying I shouldn't have to pay taxes on the $10,000 of income because I had to spend some of it, and I chose to spend it on a lawyer. We talked about this in some other video, and I said, I get it, I do, but I used to do tax. I remember tax law in law school, actually, and granted, the laws have all changed since then, but some people choose or can't get a lawyer, and they don't have the benefit of that, and they don't have the ease of when you have a lawyer, you know, and so they win. They have to pay if they have taxable income, you know, which may or may not, right? A lot of times, you know, I think like 50% of the time the person don't tax anyway, and now it's even less. And I think, well, for the seniors it's less, but would it be fair that you only have to get taxed on 8,000 of, say, and it's like your pal who didn't even have the help from a lawyer gets taxed on the whole 10? Do you see where that would be a little unfair? He couldn't even find a lawyer to help him. Had to do it all himself. And won the same thing you did. And would it be fair that he doesn't have to pay? He gets taxed on the whole thing that he won, but you, who had the luxury of a lawyer and had it easier, don't have to pay tax on the full 10. You chose to spend 2 of it on something for your ease. What if you spent it on a new car? I'm just saying. I'm just throwing the devil's advocate out there, because I would have no problem if they made that an exclusion under the law. So I'm with you. I'm just saying that logically, I see why it's the way it is. That numbers thing again. You just always up in your face. Dolphin says, in regards to the attorney fee, yep, I do have a problem. Let's repeat, I think. Does your first application, this is Big Ta. Hi, Big Ta. Good to see you again. Does your first application that's in federal appeal court, all right, so we're talking about federal district court, affect my new application claim that I'm currently? No, that's the beauty of that. Once you are out of appeals counsel, which you got denied at appeals counsel and you took it to federal district court, that old case that you were denied on, once it's out of appeals counsel, regardless of whether you go into federal district court or not, you can file the new one and they do not hurt each other. They run separately unless and until you win the federal district court and it gets remanded back. It's going to be merged with that one, and it's going to be the whole double time period. Bill F says, currently on LTD applying for SSDI. Required to have representation but little contact. Still treating but at low level. Okay. I'm going to share this little fun fact with you, and it's my perception, but it's pretty much common knowledge. Well, this is assuming that you took the representation that maybe your insurance company, your LTD carrier sent you to. They generally, is my understanding, get paid whether you win or lose. They got no skin in the game. So now if you went and found your own privately, that'd be a different story. They're just like me. And I'm sorry if they don't have a lot of contact or have a portal for that. But if it was, a lot of times LTD companies are going to shuffle you off too, because they want to make sure you apply at the very least, because some of you are going to win and then they can offset and they're going to pay out less to you. So obviously the money talks, right? If the group that's helping you is going to get paid win, lose, or draw, meaning that they're not even going to get paid from you, even if you win, they're already getting paid by the insurance company. They got a salary. They're good, you know. So whether you lose, no skin off their back, win, no benefit to them. There's far less incentive to win. I think is the natural, you know. I don't know if you guys can hear me. Oh, there, it blacked out again. Did you guys see that? Um, this is a little concerning to me, but little contact. Oh, not that part. Well, that's bad, but still treating, but at a low level. I don't know your impairments, but if you've reduced your treatment, it's probably going to optically say you're improved. And it might actually physically say you're improved in your records. So probably not the best avenue to go if your plan is to actually win your SSD. Celtic Bear Woman says, hi, Celtic Bear. I don't think we've met. You've got a very cool handbag. Is there a way to inherit an IRA without resorting to special needs trust or ABLE? I doubt it. I mean, I assume Celtic is on the SSI welfare program and she's wanting to know if she can inherit a bunch of money and stay on SSI despite having this money that she could use to support herself. Is there a way to avoid having to deal with special needs trust, SNT, or an ABLE account? I don't know the answer, but I would strongly believe that the answer is no. That would be kind of circumventing the whole thing about, you know, your neighbors are paying to support you, and here you have this $100,000 IRA that they don't even have saved up yet that you could use to support yourself, but you're saying, no, I just want to leave this here for me to buy fun things, and you can keep paying my rent. You know what I mean? Like it makes it a little contrary to what SSI is supposed to be. It's supposed to be needs-based, you know, not for those that don't need. SMT and ABLE are a little different. They are kind of carve-outs, so they're helpful. I think they're probably a blessing for people on SSI to be able to do that. I know it's a blessing for the parents who want to leave an inheritance to their kids because they don't want to see their kids get off of SSI because, not because they wouldn't have the money, because of the Medicaid that comes along with it. You know, because if they don't have the Medicaid, the medical bills are going to eat up that $100,000 they just inherited really fast. They're disabled. I mean, usually your medical bills are much bigger, right? So, so I would embrace that SMT ABLE opportunity if that's something that's in your future. And I'm sorry if you're inheriting and you lost someone that you're close to. That's not a fun thing to go through that part of life, right? All right. Dog Blues is in the house and says, oceans of blessings, y'all. I love that. We'll take it. Oh, check it out. I'm just saying your picture is really cool. It says, smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. That's adorable and so true for all of us in life as well. Very cool. Christina says, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Yes, I agree with Christina. Mr. Two Scoops is in the house. Hi, Mr. Two Scoops. I'm 47, Recon, RRMS. I assume that's the version of multiple sclerosis. 2 positive CEs saying markedly limited. Ooh. 2 letters, CEs from the SSA doctors, right? 2 letters, neurologists saying disabled. All right, that part's not helpful for reasons we've stated in other videos. Neurologists shouldn't say you're disabled. They should actually say what your limitations are, specifically with activity tasks and such. 1 PCP letter saying disabled, again, not helpful. In fact, it can be hurtful. It now says I'm an FQR. That's good. Not because your neurologist did those letters, by the way. Unless those parts that you just told me about had to be disregarded by the SSA under law, had to be disregarded. However, if also in those letters, they did talk about specifics, like he can't walk, he's in a wheelchair, you know, make a stuff up. Full-time cannot walk 3 steps without likely falling. You know, I'm being big here, but if they did have examples like that, and those are specific task-related things, walking for 3 feet, that would be what helped you. And those 2 positive CEs saying markedly someplace, that's very helpful. And now that we know you're an FQR, I think that's good. I think that's good. It's more often than not very good. I think high end proportionally it's good. So fingers crossed for you that you're not the rare exception, but it looks good. And the way you describe the evidence, that's good too. Fingers crossed for you. Dan says, I just wish to say thank you as I have found assurance through your channel through the process thus far. Oh, my pleasure. Come again every Wednesday. There might be a Wednesday. I'll tell you when it comes up. I think it's going to be Wednesday the 17th. I might not be here. Oh, well, no. Yeah, maybe I'll make it Thursday. We'll have to see. Thursday or Friday. Do you guys have a preference? I might have to move that week. We're going to be at Knoebels in Eastman Park with the kids, the big kids. Sherry Ramirez in the house. Hi, Sherry. I just got new insurance. Do I try to get into a neurologist before my hearing on June 24th? If you can. That'd be great. Yeah. If you have neurological problems and you can get a follow-up that maybe you haven't had in a while. Yeah. It's always better to have more. You know? Getting it that fast could be tricky. Those neurologists, I swear, you know, I think we pump out neurologists and then we let them go back to their other country. And now we have neurologists because we didn't let anyone who lives here permanently go to the med school, but everyone else. You know, it takes. I'm only an hour and a half out of New York City. We got a lot of health networks in my area. 8 months to get a neurologist appointment. 8 months. Could be dead by then. Seriously. Swim with the Fishy says, husband's granddaughter has no assets in her name, no trust fund. Hospitalization is a frequent occurrence. Not likely going to be able to live independently. You know, and you can get, you know, is this, I don't know if this is this, well, you don't have to go into details here. Yeah, so SSI sounds like game on, you know. SSI and DAC. Apply for both. If you get the SSI, they have to give you the DAC, you know. As long as she's not married to someone else, you know, that whole thing. That's the 18-year-old, right? Yeah, SSI and DAC at the same time. Don't let them leave either one of them out. Sometimes I've heard them say, and this is untrained people, well, we'll do the SSI, and only if you win it will we do the DAC. No, because what if she had $10,000 in the bank and SSI wasn't even a twinkle in the eye? You still have to take her DAC application. So if they say you can only do one, speak to a manager. That's BS. Black 305. Hi, Black. You heard of Trump sending a Social Security task force? I just heard him actually talking today. How hugely stronger it can be based on plans if they're not impeded. So that's awesome. So I assume you mean a very good Social Security task force. That would be good. AU says, I asked if the 3373 was a standard procedure question. By renewal, I mean that I'm going through what I believe. Oh, continuing CDR. Okay, got you. Got you, IU. I do see them on CDRs. I don't know if they're standard or not. I mean, I don't really handle a lot of CDRs anymore. I do more consulting on them, and usually it's the long form, sometimes the short form that I assist with. But oh no, I just did one with somebody. It was a CDR. Okay, but I don't know if it's universal. I would think it is because you're almost kind of like representing, you know. The only difference is you're still getting paid if you know. So you're on a 3-year diary for the CDR. That means its medical improvement is expected. So you need to be super diligent with keeping up with your medical treatment and your diagnostics to show that things are still as bad as they were when you were applying. Okay, 3 years is you have the kind of condition they expect to improve. So you're gonna have the onus seems in reality on you to make sure that's clear that you have not improved as they expected. Dan is 58. That's a wonderful age. We were womb mates, Dan, in different wombs. Yes, guys, I know I'm corny. I say that every time. Did I just go up? I did. Okay. Dan has CPTSD. I'm sorry to hear that. KJ says fear of open space. Yeah, we got claustrophobia, and then we got the opposite, right, KJ? So Dan says all pre-documented and treated except agoraphobia. Well, you know what? Jump on that. Jump on that. Start getting treated for agoraphobia. And how did your own treating providers not know that you had it? That's the sad part. Was it not evident? Maybe it just happened. So it's not even a 12-month duration, which means that part might be the slippery slope one. KJ says, what is greater than 50? That is when the medical vocational rules become favorable for people, meaning easier rules. And it's because the ability for us old coots to adjust to other work becomes diminished. It's very hard for an older person they could do their old job pretty good, but could they take their skills from that job and put it in an easier job that, let's say they can't do their old job because physically they just can't stand that long, but they have those skills that they learned from that job, so it's got to be a skilled job, and then there's a job that uses those skills, and it's a sit-down job. And so the question is, can that person at their age and the way our brains are adjust to that new job with those skills? And the law, like, judicially recognizes, if you will, that once we hit 50, it is diminished a bit. So they have some laws that help people from, say, 50 to 54 to be able to win without proving they can't do sedentary work. You could still be physically able to do sedentary work, and they will be able to say, under certain circumstances, if you meet the criteria still that you have to meet, that even though they can do sedentary work, they're disabled under this rule. Same is true of an even easier one is 55 and above. It's not even just if you can do sedentary, you could still win. If you can do sedentary or light work, and you just can't do the medium or heavier work, and you meet the other prongs required in those rules, then you could still win. I have a playlist on that if you want to know the real details on that. Under 50, it essentially doesn't apply in the practical sense. So Dan says only agoraphobia CE added, all others under treatment even now that's probably why it's good. Okay. I mean, if you have other stuff and you don't even need the agoraphobia. And it's funny because it could even be you were never formally diagnosed with it because providers can be lazy. But it could be that things show up in the record where you're actually expressing this fear of going out. Or, like maybe there's soft signs like you're reclusive. Reclusive person might have a little agoraphobia sometimes. You know what I mean? It's just not stated. Celtic Bear is confirming SSDI. Okay, let me go back up to what we were talking about, Celtic, because I know we were talking about maybe it was SSI because of something you said, and I want to... Okay, so Celtic, better news then. If this is SSDI, You can inherit $1 million. You can play the lottery and get $1 million. You can inherit anything you want, and you're not going to lose your SSDI because of it. S&T and ABLE accounts are only for SSI. Okay, for the reasons I said. And I'm glad. I love it when disabled people inherit a lot of money, and it's like, see, they're not going to have to live tightly. Okay. Anyway, so that's cool, Celtic. I'm glad to hear that. It's better news. Big Ta says, continued 2 of 2. I turned 50 in October, right? So you're 49. And I have 2 new severe impairments, 1 stroke and right eye with permanent vision loss. Are you blind in that eye by chance? Or just reduction? And bone-on-bone arthritis in my thumbs right behind the worst. And okay, so I will say this. Even when you're 50, vision loss is not going to affect your exertional capacity. So that will not probably help you with the grids that we're talking about. So you still have to then follow the same rules as the 49-year-olds. All right. Bone-on-bone arthritis in your thumbs. You also don't walk on your thumbs. So that, again, is not going to really affect the exertional. All right. Sometimes when we have arthritis, we actually have it in other areas. If you haven't done it, Big Todd, I know we've spoken before, but I don't recall the specifics. If you look at a body chart and go from head to toe and all on your extremities included and all the way down the back and all the way down and you can point to particularly the joints in the back and stuff like that. If those things are, I mean, you already had other impairments, maybe these are those. But if any of those joints do not act as strong, fast, comfortable, durational, capable of repetition as when you were 20, there's something impaired there. Oftentimes it's age-related degeneration or sedentary lifestyle like my own, which is requiring me to get my physical therapy 3 times a week. They're called PT, guys. Those things are what can affect that. Because remember, to be able to use the grids over 50 for that easier rule, you have to prove your first prong is proving at 50 to 54 that you can do no more than sedentary work. So you have to have those. And sedentary is, it means you can't do light work. You can't be on your feet for 6 out of 8 hours a day, and you can't lift up to 20 pounds. You can't do that 10 to 20 pound range. That's what you have to prove. And that is probably not going to happen from these 2 additions. However, it's always important to add everything because it can add to other things. Like if it can still otherwise prevent 12,000 jobs potentially. If you have a ton of other little impairments that carve out, something is carving out every single one of those jobs. This impairment for this, then you could win as an under 50, even though you're 50, when you turn 50. But if you have those impairments that would affect the exertional capacity to lift or walk and stand, that is what you really want to plow home on as well. Don't leave any of these out though, but that's what you need to meet that one prong. You got to meet a lot of prongs, right? So what are the criteria? 3 of 3 for Big Ta. 3, mild impairment with right foot. So that starts to affect the exertional. Maybe you said it's mild. So I don't know what that means. Right foot drop. All this is happening after the first hearing denial. I forgot where you're at. Are you, did you refile again, or are you in appeals council, or are you heading to FTC? Refresh me. All right, guys, we're at 20 minutes past the race, or way past the 2-hour mark. I'm going to try to get through all these questions kind of expeditiously here. You're welcome, Mr. Two Scoops. Lionel, hey, Lionel, I haven't seen you in a really long time. I hope you're doing well. Oh, yeah, look at he says, hello, it's been a year since I was awarded on recon. So you are the one that won and ran. That's okay. I'm glad you're going on with your life. Awarded at recon. I wanted to say thank you for all your help It's been a year. And because of the information I received in here, I was successful. You are the best. Guys, I love it when you put back like that. Makes my day, my week, my month, my year. The best of luck to all on here. That's really sweet. Thank you, Lionel. Thanks for coming back and visiting. Feel free to pop in anytime. Mary Joan Hill says, hello. Hello to you, Mary. Big Todd says, 4 of 4 got denied at 49 with an RFC of sedentary and can't do past work. That gives you, all right. And now you have a new claim, right? Big Todd? As long as they don't see improvement, I think you have a decent chance of winning on your next application because now you'll be paid. Did you already file it or are you going to wait? I think it was not that far away, but. Mary Jo, 58 too. Hey, Woomy. Oh, gotta be a cornball every time. AU says, thank you very much. I was so lost when filling it out. Your videos are a must. I appreciate. Thank you so much. Bill says, turn 60 next week. Oh, yeah. 60 years young, Bill. So that's why I'm looking at it, and I'm right behind you. I'll be 59 this summer, and then so I have my physical therapy, so I can be better improved before I turn 60. Mary says, I can't do the computer very well. I hear you. I can do it because I've been doing it for so long, but when I have to do something new, and being like the owner-operator of this place, there's a lot of things I try to introduce, and I have to learn them first before I can show anyone else or even master it. So I guess I'm keeping my brain a little bit alive by doing that. You know, even programming. I've been doing some programming, so it's kind of cool. Mary Lou says, I'm emphysema, degenerative disc disease, osteoporosis, and Hashimoto. Wow. So do you have a claim? I'm old. Hey, you're not old. Remember, we're roommates. Come on now. 67, probably. 67. Sybil says, thanks for all you give back. Have a great day. Stephanie, you too. Big Toss says, 5 of 5. Representative is in the process of filing the new claim now. All right. Well, you're on your way. And, you know, it could end up being where they award you. You're not going to back benefits, but, you know, they could award you, I guess, with that category age change coming up if you're in within a few months, which where are we at? We're at May. Maybe not quite yet, but in theory, they could look at it, I think, within 6 months. But, you know, by the time you get connected and it gets to the adjudicator, it's kind of probably be a few months down the road anyway. Dimple, you are welcome. Oops. Dimple said, thank you so much for all you do. Love the weekly videos, even though I have to watch the replays. Well, sometimes it's probably easier watching the replays. You're probably talking about the straight replay from this, and then I have the one where I strip out all the pauses. Not that we have a lot of pauses lately. I don't know. I try to press the button where it says get rid of the ums and the ahs. Because you'll always have your critic that says, you say too much. Yes, I do, and I'm proud of it. Tricka says, have a wonderful day. You too. Michelle, thank you for always being available as we went through this process together. One of my favorite clients, Michelle, you are. Thank you for always being so kind and supportive of the channel as well. Big Todd, thanks. You are welcome. Mary Joan, if you're still here. All right, so I just wanted, you said that that's step 4. Yep. You have a claim going on. I assume you have an attorney. Step 4. That usually is not something that shows up. It blows right through it. And then, so that makes me think you're at the field office, not actually. So either you haven't been to the DDS yet, and they haven't done the medical workup, or you have, and it's back at the field office. I don't know which one. And that doesn't, so then we don't know if there's an order now. But if you, your attorney might know more if he's gotten any kind of mail or anything like that. Oh, Mary, you like my bird? Yeah, she's sweet. What's your fluff? Sometimes she'll have fluff on her beak, and I'll try to take. She doesn't like you going near her face, so unless you're feeding her food, and she'll. Ooh, I just put the fluff on my head, and she'll she'll be like, "Stay away from me." She doesn't want you touching her beak or taking it off. You know, if she's got to have her mouth wiped or something. She'll eventually clean it herself, but yeah, she's beautiful. She's really sweet, sweet. So you have an attorney you've never spoken to. Okay, so she didn't even do like the original intake with you. Does she have messaging with you back and forth that you can do? My people are in there like all the time. The ones that really get involved in their own cases and tend to have the best results are in there a lot, and they're sharing a lot of information to us, and it's really helpful. Oh, quality review. Then sounds like you're in a good spot. Quality review. If it's federal quality review, FQR, Mary, that's really good usually. Usually. If it's just non-medical review, but there was no FQR, then it's 50-50 crapshoot. But it sounds like you got some mean things going on, and we are in that wonderful age of 58 where the rules are most favorable for us. So fingers crossed for you. I think you probably have a good chance on this round. I jumped to Monterey review. Just did the intake. What do you okay? Like I don't have phone chats with my people, only if I think it's necessary for the case. So sometimes they'll be like, they'll say to Liz, like, I really want to talk to Stephanie about blah, blah, blah. Can you call me? And it's like, no. If you have something you need to talk about that nobody can get you the answer for, and Stephanie needs to, then Stephanie will call. If it's something that's needed for the case, not about, sometimes people feel like they need to talk to you, but it has nothing really to do with the case, but they don't know that. So we try to explain that to them. And then because we have a really robust messaging system, and it also takes text, so they could do it from their phone if they don't want to log in. It's such a, there's no, everything's covered in terms of if you need to communicate. You just might not be able to get to chat and have coffee for an hour, that kind of thing. Mary, that looks really good. Oh, your bank account got closed. We'll go open another one now. And you can get the Direct Express debit card instead, right? So let's say you can't open a bank account. Let's say you got bad credit and the banks are like, no, because you owed $100. If you can't open one right away, get the they can put your Social Security on you probably already know this, the Direct Express debit card. I think it's still called Direct Express. SSA sets it up for you. And then your money's every month will be put on there. And then you could change it. So you can have it go in there, and then as you get a bank account, then you change it and you get it into the bank account. But that way, at least you're getting your money ASAP. Oh, negative $7.99. So you owe them $800. So get the Direct Express debit card. Hopefully you can pay the $800, and then because that will go on probably your credit report and stuff. I mean, that may not matter to you. It's not like they can get blood from a stone. However, it's nice to have the bank account. You can use it for other things, not just collecting your SS, right? Yeah, you don't have it. Direct Express. Now, if they haven't reported you to the credit agency yet, I wonder if you could open in a different bank and they won't know about it yet. Or is it like the whole banking system is in each other's ears? And then you could open a bank. I think once you have it open, they don't really close it if you put money in it. Christina, thank you. Christina's still here. Yeah, you have to get approved first, but it sounds good. It does sound good. Federal quality review. We like that. All right, Mary Joan, Christina, thank you guys. I don't know if anybody's still here. There's 37 people still here. I'm going to close it out, guys. Thanks for coming. Please do bring your friends. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. That'll be Wednesday. I don't even know the date. What is the date next week? Hold on. Next Wednesday will be, June 3rd. All right. June 3rd. All right. Well, I will see you guys June 3rd, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Oops, if you care to appear. I hope you do. And you know, you ever have a question, you can always put it in any video, any daytime video that's up there. I will see them because I get a little notification, and I will get to them eventually, usually within a week. All right, Mary Jo, I'm just touching on your thing. You said, thank you, Dimple, you too. Mary Jo said, I asked, that said I can't put money in it. The bank the bank that you have the negative, the bank you're at that you have kind of breached the contract and you owe the money, they said it. But what about did you ask a different bank? Is that what you're saying? I mean, don't tell them about your problem with this bank. None of their business. They just might have their ways of knowing. So just curious if that would work. If not, I mean, immediately call the, I mean, you haven't gotten your award yet, so it's probably premature, but if they've already asked you for your banking information, the SSA, that means that you probably won. And that's when you want to say, I need to do the debit card for now, but I will be opening a bank account, hopefully in the future. So it's going to stink having to pay that $800, but you owed it for other reasons. I hope it wasn't all overdraft fees. That is the worst. The worst. I've been there. All right. Not in a long time, but, you know, I think we all have at some point. All right. Nice to meet you, Mary Joan Hill. And I will see everybody next time. Have a great one, guys. Be well.